Welcome to a very special edition of Pizarro Basketball Live. The 2025 NBA Draft will feed families. This is going to be a general overview of the top 10 guys in the 2025 draft. How good is this draft? How good can it be? You know, looking at these prospects, the film study. I'm here with my man John Drummond from @TheBuzzerSports. Definitely go give @TheBuzzerSports a follow. John and I are on the panel all the time. John, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. One of my favorite parts of the analysis of basketball is just doing the scouting process every year, looking at these young players and trying to really figure out what they can become at the higher level, seeing what their strengths are and their weaknesses. I'm really excited to break these guys down and look at their growth throughout this season and over the offseason heading into the NBA.
There's a few guys who maybe aren't showing the greatest numbers. Their shooting splits are a little bit weird. There's a lot of players who get super hyped in the first few weeks, but it's not until maybe Christmas, New Year, that we start to really figure out who these players are as the schedule flattens out a little bit. The format is going to be pretty simple. We're going to look at these 10 players. We're going to let them introduce themselves so you can hear a little bit from these players. Something that I often feel is missing from the scouting analysis. We're going to talk about a little bit about their defense. We're going to look at some film. We're going to talk about their offense. We're going to look at a lot of film of offense. We're going to talk about the ideal team that these players should be on to be successful. And maybe some places where they wouldn't fit very well. What kind of team structure might really hinder them? What role situation, like a Collin Boyles? I don't know, man. Like certain places may not be so great for him. And we're going to talk about an overview of the player, and then we'll talk about their player comp. Maybe some players that we think that they could be in the worst case, best case scenario. And then we'll obviously talk about their fit with the Toronto Raptors. We're going to talk about some players that maybe I didn't have in my top 10 that John definitely does. So we'll get deeper than just these 10 guys, but I'm going to start with Collin Boyles.
So it's more about my team. It's one-on-one.
How close were you to not coming back? I mean, just the decision in that, and then now that you come back, what have you seen? What is the group in going forward in year two?
I think I made my decision before I enrolled in college that I was going to come back. I wasn't really deciding on whether I wanted to leave or stay. I was always going to stay. I don't know. I like to keep my motto the same as last year. Just be there for the team, do what's needed for the team. And that's score the ball, I'm gonna score. If that's get rebounds, play defense, switch on multiple people, that's gonna be that. So it's just whatever the team needs me to do.
Absolutely built after like what the Raptors really value. Now, look at that block. I mean, that is some absolutely great recovery on that block for an undersized guy who's about 6'7". He definitely has the motor and the skill and the lateral quickness to stay with some smaller players for sure. And, you know, we're going to see the pressure. And I just think the recovery is so great with him and the strength, right? He has grown man strength at 235 pounds. You know, his ability to just bump dudes. I believe this is going to translate and make him a very useful role player. Now, I don't think a lot of people like role players in the top 10. Typically, they like to let those guys slide down to 22. And that's exactly where we see a guy like Ryan Dunn or something like that. And we say, how did he fall all that way? And it's like, well, he didn't have any star upside, right? And it's just like, be a star in your role. Collin Boyles, a star in his role. It's not just all defense, though, obviously. There's a lot of offense there, too, right? You know, he bumps, and he's not necessarily like an above-the-rim finisher or an explosive athlete, but he's a very balanced and coordinated athlete, and I think he has big shoulders. I think he likes to, you know, he really just – I think he has good hands. He has great hands. You know, I really like his hands. And while the numbers haven't necessarily translated this year, I think he's going to have a fine season. He has good touch around the rim. You know, he finishes on that play with his left hand. That's the jumper, right? And is he projecting well? No, he's not a good free throw shooter. He's not a good three-point shooter. He hasn't really shown a tremendous amount. Is he a massively explosive athlete? No, but he just knows how to play the game, man. Like he understands angles. He understands spots. He understands where to be. He understands he's a great screener.
My thoughts about Collin Boyles, obviously 6'7", very strong, can put the ball on the floor. He does have some solid defensive attributes. When I look at his game, I don't think he's ever going to be the athletic rim protector or the very tall rim protector. I think he is missing a little bit of size when we look at that defensively. But as a help side rim protector, I think he's very talented. He can be he can be very aggressive sometimes on that defensive end, but we see a lot of younger defensive prospects be very aggressive on that side. I think a lot of that has to come with experience, but the ball handling, the playmaking, the finishing through contact, the versatile finisher that he is. I think all of that brings some value to the NBA, but we see multiple times a lot of teams sag off just a little bit with him in his jump shot, just being a little inconsistent. But once again, I'm still gonna give him some time to progress that shooting aspect. But when I look at his game, this is a guy that is obviously going to command a double team when he is getting downhill. Somebody who does have a very tight handle for his size. And I could see him as a small forward. I could see him as a power forward, kind of like one of those combo small forward, power forward kind of guys.
If he doesn't work out well, if he doesn't shoot the ball well, maybe, after the season ends for South Carolina, he can definitely like work on his jumper a little bit more, get in the gym with a trainer. We've seen a lot of prospects fix that towards the end of the season. And then, they come into the workouts and they're like, oh, this guy's shooting it now, like Ryan Dunn. So he's going to have to follow the Ryan Dunn formula. I don't see a way that he can be a top 15 pick if he doesn't shoot a little bit or show some shooting progression. What's the ideal fit for Collin Murray Boyles?
I think one of the ideal fits would be one of these contending teams that have a pick that could land themselves in the lottery. I think a team like OKC, where it's not going to be a lot of eyes on him, where he can silently develop his game throughout his maybe first or second season. I think that could be very helpful for him. Just a guy who's going to maybe come in, play some minutes in a stretch, who is very physical down low, has the potential to be a good rebounder, the way he boxes out, the way he uses his strength. And that's something that OKC could really use. And I behind someone like Isaiah Hartenstein, who may not be the most consistent shooter, but finds ways to create space with the way he plays out of dribble handoffs and the way he has this floater game with the in-between game and how he's able to rim protect and rebound. That's somebody I think he can really learn off of. So I love the
hand-eye coordination. How do you feel about his hand-eye coordination? I really like his hands. Like,
yeah, the way he's able to poke the ball free and just disrupt ball handlers. I've seen clips where he's guarding players one-on-one and he's been able to poke the ball free or just disrupt their dribble to where they could lose and now they have to pick their pass, or now their vision is blocked because of the way his hands are so active. So it's really impressive. And I think playing behind a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein would be phenomenal.
So you're seeing him as a center type, potentially, if he can't shoot, right? And there's some truth to like the fact that maybe he could be like a Trace Jackson Davis type a little bit. You're lagging in a little bit. Your internet's a little bit lagging in and out, but yeah. So I mean, in terms of just, I'm thinking unideal fits. I'm thinking a team that's going to box him into a corner. I think this is a young player who needs to have a great development staff. Teams like Memphis, teams like OKC, teams that can sort of build him along. Maybe some G League reps wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. I know people sort of sour on the idea of a guy needing G League reps at the pro level. But, Grady Dick spent some time in the G League last year, and I think it did him wonders. Jacoby Walter spending some time in the G League. That's a Gatorade National Player of the Year that spent time in the G League and struggled last year. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the further he can get away from dominating the way he has dominated and get into new forms of domination, right? He has incredible feel for the game. I don't think that's something you can necessarily teach. It's usually just kind of innate in prospects when you see it when they're 16, 17 years old. It doesn't usually go away, and it almost always translates. There's another thing that always translates from the college ranks to the NBA, and that's rebounding. So he's going to be able to rebound. Now, if he can be a small forward, if he can really stretch the floor, he certainly has the hip flexibility, I think, to play that position. A little bit like an OG Anunoby. Maybe he's definitely not the shooter that OG was in Indiana, but I see a lot of defensive tools that OG had, and he has some length and some strength to him. So I think, the upside on him is, if you get him in the lottery, you're getting a guy who can contribute to winning right away. Most rookies will not contribute to winning. In a limited role, he will contribute to winning. I think the ideal fit for him will be a team that will patiently build up the parts of his game that need development, like the jump shot, and we'll be able to live with him taking jump shots when he's shooting 23, 24% from three, and, in limited minutes, still expand that part of his game. In terms of just an overview, certainly, this is a very, very optimistic outcome for Collin Murray Boyles. He has to do a lot right for teams to see the value in him that I see in him. I think he could slip all the way to the late 20s, or early 20s, in which case I think some contender is going to get a steal. And I think he's going to be the type of guy who is probably going to make a first team all rookie team or a second team all rookie team, that type of dude. I think he's going to be that Jorge Garbajosa type in a way, like the guy who does all the little stuff and he's just everywhere and he's always just impacting winning and you have no idea how he got like a 7 box plus minus for that game, but he just gets it. How do you feel about his fit with the Toronto Raptors, a team that already employs a lot of questionable shooters?
I think defensively, him and Scotty Barnes' fit could be suffocating. I think with their size and with Scotty Barnes' athleticism and how great they both are at the help side defense and how versatile Scotty Barnes is on the defensive side already, I think that could be very suffocating. I think their minutes together could be very disruptive.
Do you have a player comparison for him that you see him looking like this player or that player?
Off the top of my head, if I were to say like a athletic forward, strong forward, I would say maybe like a lesser version of Aaron Gordon, like with his size and how he's able to guard on the perimeter, great rebounder, plays a lot in the dunker spot. But then
But
again,
not
I
quite
don't
the explosive vertical athlete that Aaron
exactly,
Gordon is.
exactly.
So a below the rim Aaron Gordon ain't moving anybody as a lottery pick, because Aaron Gordon barely, I think, would go. I don't know. Aaron has molded himself. Is there anything that you could say like he does better at this stage than Aaron did at the same age?
I think the ball handling is better for Collin Boyles at the moment. I do think his upside defensively has shown a little bit more than what Aaron Gordon has shown in his early days. I think those have really been
How
the
would you
key
feel
factors
if
so
I
far.
said that the comparison that's closer to him is Draymond Green?
I don't hate it defensively. I don't hate it.
I think he's got point forward skills. Like he's a
Mhm.
monster rebounder, right? Maybe not Draymond level, because Draymond was an insane defender and great rebounder, but he's got a lot more size than Draymond at this, and he's a little bit younger. I think he's got maybe more potential as a scorer, just naturally speaking, like as a scorer. The next player we're talking about is Rocco.
I have a lot of trust in Justin and a lot of trust in Vandy. It's close to home. I can be around family.
One, he's a humble kid. Like he knows that it only comes with work. So he's not expecting anything. He's going to make it happen.
I have this next level of trust. He's the only coach that has ever talked things out with me to make sure that I'm not going home angry, upset, or confused.
A lot of fun going out there and playing against him. And to be honest, I tell him, I know I'm fouling you, I know I'm pushing you around, I know what I'm doing to you isn't allowed in many basketball game scenarios. But what I love about it is he still comes back and he's still going out there to compete. And I keep telling him, when you keep playing through this, I know you're going to be able to play through anything.
This dude reminds me of a certain Raptor, and I'm curious if the chat is going to figure out who. Now, here's some defense. He gets a little distracted there. Get that garbage out of here, man. This dude blocks everything. And while he is not necessarily fleet-footed, he moves his feet really well. He's going to miss this rebound, and then he's going to come down, and he's just going to recover. That's good timing. That's good timing without the foul, right? Here, he's going to wall up, rule of verticality, and he's still going to be able to swipe down on the guard here, thus sparking a fast break. And I like that he generally keeps it in bounds. I really like shot blockers who keep shit in bounds, and he almost always keeps it in bounds. Here we go. Here's another block. This is brilliant, right? He's playing over in the NBL, and there's a lot of positives here. Defensively, just a rim clogger. And we're seeing players like this sort of become fashionable again, right? Donovan Clingan, right? Guys like Zach Edey. And we're seeing some success. He can run the court a little bit. Here's a little, look at him running the court and in transition. He's not necessarily lumbering. He's not bursty. He's not Victor Wembanyama. He's not necessarily Khaman Maluach. But, he's got some stuff. He's got some good touch around the rim. I like his passing. He is a good decision maker in the middle of the court. And the Raptors really, really seem to value that in their bigs. He is a good positional rebounder. He gets knocked off his spot a little bit because he's playing against grown men and he has a lot of strength. But look at that pass. It's just good pass right there to identify the advantage. He doesn't take a long time to scan the floor. He can take it off the dribble a little bit, usually for a left-hand finish. But, that shows some nice touch. Someone saying Marc Gasol. Someone's saying Ulrich. Someone's saying Biyombo. Shamshe. Yo, are y'all crazy? Are you really, you don't see it? Wow. Okay. When people get it, like when people hear who I'm going to compare him to, they're going to lose their minds. Look at that dribble, right? Now it's not like you don't want him doing 4 dribbles, but a center who's 7'3", who can take it off the dribble, roll into a post up. I mean, oh dear God, does he have Jokic potential? He does not. Does Bosch? What? Unicorn? Y'all, are you guys high? Dirk? What? Bro, have you seen him take a single jump shot? Keon Clark. Oh my God. Y'all just tripping now. Y'all are trying to troll me and it's not going to work, okay? Because this is crazy. Stop saying Coloco, bro. Oh my God. No, not ex-Raptor. I just said Raptor. He was once an ex-Raptor until he became a Raptor again. Fire!
I think for
Coach,
me it was really
Coach Roach with the correct
I have a lot
answer.
of trust in Justin and
Okay. Yes, Jakob Poeltl. He is basically a carbon copy of Jakob Poeltl. Okay. So in terms of Rocco, what do you see in him as a unideal fit? First of all, what are your thoughts on him?
My thoughts on Rocco is I think he has that footwork and he rotates really well in defense and he recovers really well. Like whether I've seen some film where he's playing up in the pick and roll and he's recovered on guards to the point where he's still able to block a shot with his length and his wingspan. He's able to recover on some players that may drive past him, or the way he flips his hips in rotation, or the way he's able to recover when people may attack like the wrong foot. He's able to recover really well, and he has the rim running, finishing aspect. He has a great touch around the rim. He could be very good in the pick and roll, like you said. He does make solid decisions. Whether it be in the short, whether it be from the post, but just basically in the middle floor. So I think him and Khaman Maluach, I think both of these guys are really slept on defensive prospects because I think these guys are really good at the.
I agree with you. And, in terms of like ideal and unideal fits, obviously, a 7-footer, I don't necessarily think he sprints the court up. Like he's not Ulrich Shamshi, he's not, he's some of those Evan Mobley types. But we're seeing it now where if you're going to play with a big like this, you're going to have to use them in the center of the court a little bit. You're going to have to use them as a bit of a post hub. You're going to have to allow them to make decisions. I think he screens really well. I think he has incredible touch around the rim. He seals his man. He's physical. That's what I like. I like bigs who like physicality, bigs who have a little bit of a nasty streak. That's what I like so much about Ulrich. He's dominating the G League right now with those 6 blocks, 3 block type of games, and he's nasty. He goes after it. Those are grown men. So here he's getting bumped off his spot a little bit because high center of gravity, 7'3". People always think, oh, you're 7'3", you should dunk. It's like, nah. Sometimes it's hard to dunk when you're 7'3" because your hips are so high. Guys are just getting under you and bumping you off your spot. So, I think in terms of an unideal fit is probably like a sprint transition type of offense with really, really poor perimeter defenders that are going to constantly put him in rotation and really expose him a little bit. But I do find him to be pretty nimble for his size. And I think that it's important to say you can be not necessarily nimble, but be extremely nimble and coordinated for your size. I find him to be pretty coordinated. I feel that he maps the court extremely well defensively. I think his hand-eye coordination is brilliant. I think his timing on some of these blocks and tips is really good. His passing and playmaking are very promising. I think the swing skill will be shooting. That will be huge because, we're seeing Zach Edey take threes. We're seeing Donovan Clingan take some threes, not necessarily at any high success rate. And probably it's not going to necessarily translate to high volume at the 3-point level, but being able to show some competence to stretch the court, even if you only become a 28% 3-point shooter, like a Marc Gasol type, never really guarded, but you can take a few and just keep the defense a little bit honest. So you're not a complete net negative there. I think he will actually, if he stays healthy, again, always the concern with 7'3" prospects, health, joints, ligaments. If he stays healthy and he continues to play this way, I could see him being a late lottery, type of guy for a team that's desperate for a big. It's worth noting that, again, the league is getting increasingly competitive. and getting actual value, like rotation player value from one of these players when they're this young is exceptional value, because that's team building philosophy right now. You know, the CBA is making it very, very hard for teams to build. If I'm being honest, he's probably not going to be ninth on anyone else's board unless something really drastic happens with the shooting, or he starts to shoot it better at the free throw line, or starts taking a couple threes. More likely than not, he's probably going to be a mid-teens pick for somebody. He might even slide, you know, like Rudy Gobert slid. He might even slide to the 20s. So I think both him and Collin Boyles share that in common, which is they could go late lottery, but they could also slide to the back end of, you know, the second to the first round. But I do think that whoever gets them is getting a really competitive player. In terms of the Raptors fit, I really do think that this is a player that the Raptors really could use, but probably already have a duplicate of. So this would be one of those, the minute you get this guy, now you can move off of Jakob Poeltl. You have officially found your Jakob Poeltl replacement. He's not as good as Yak right now, but he's a much better rim protector than Yak. I think projecting forward, I think he's going to be a bigger shot blocker. I think he's got like some incredible timing. And, you know, again, the Raptors need some size there. And now with a rookie, you'll be able to bring him off the bench. And that way you can start to look for, you know, you'll have that sort of size to match up with some of those bigger centers like Ivica Zubac and guys like that. But maybe now you can start to look for your stretch big in the starting lineup, because Scotty desperately needs one. Moving on to a player that I think a lot of people are sleeping on right now, and that's
Kasparas Jakucionis. Yeah.
Yes,
Kind of
with an accent from me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's all good. So I started playing basketball when I was 3 years old, and from then till now I just still continue playing basketball. But I played soccer in middle school, like in the breaks and with my friends. Nothing special, nothing professional.
I mean, what is the love of basketball? Is it a family thing? Is it you just love the game, or what is your love here?
My parents told me that when I was very little, I used to always have the ball in my hands, and they just decided to put me in like kindergarten practices of basketball. And from the first day I like it, and I still continue playing. So I'm very happy for them, for my family, that they decided to put me in this situation.
What do you prefer, passing, shooting? Is there a preference? Do you just like the ball in your hands? Is there a preference? Or?
No, I just do whatever team needs to win, so that's it.
But you are a creative passer. That's something you really enjoy.
Yeah, I enjoy involving all the teammates to the game. Let them feel the ball and play make.
So I'm not going to look at a lot of defense for him, but there was a nice little shot block there. He is disruptive. He's not necessarily as bad a defender as you might think on the first glance. He participates. He's active. He has a motor. He cares about that. Take a look at that pass. Love it. That was like a football pass, man. I like his shiftiness off the dribble. It is pretty good. I think his handle is competitive, very decent. Finishes there with the left hand, manipulates the defense here. You know, nice little pull up. We've seen Grady do a lot of this year. You know, I think he projects pretty well as a 3-level scorer. There's some shooting upside there as a really good 3-point shooter. So I'm seeing a lot to like here in him as a, you know, like just a like a competent NBA guard. You know, I'm not sure star necessarily, all-star or what. I mean, there's no there. You definitely don't rule it out this early, right?
Yeah.
Could he be a 1-time, 2-time, 3-time all-star? Sure. Is he gonna be a superstar? Probably not. But in terms of just competitive guard play, all around guard play, which can participate, you know, which can create off the dribble, can play on the ball, off the ball, you know, can competitively, you know, relocate, you know, as a corner shooter or above the break, can participate in transition as a hitchless athlete. I don't want to say an explosive athlete, but a very fluid mover, not you know, hitchy. And look at that beautiful pass to the corner, you know, just draws the defense, sucks them in, and then, you know, finds the corner shooter there. And, you know, it's just like, again, like sometimes with players like him and Nolan, it's at game speed, they're just like, yeah. But then you start to slow down what they're doing, and it's just like, oh, damn, you know, that was swift, right? So I think, you know, between him and Dylan Harper, like obviously, like Dylan is a much higher rated prospect, and we can definitely talk about how these two players compare. neither one of them are explosive athletes. Both of them are high feel, players. Both of them are great connective and, on the ball passers. I think they both have that ability to play 1, 2, maybe even a little bit of 3. So I think he's a little bit slept on. I'm seeing him, late teens for a lot of mock drafts, and I think this is a player, just his insane basketball IQ is going to bring him up. I think for a lot of people, it's going to endear him to a lot of teams, and shooting is very valuable, passing is very valuable, and I could, I would love to see him on a team like Boston if he does slip or something like that. I think he'd be great. But SP saying sounds like Wesley Matthews. I don't think so. No. Okay. So in terms of Kasparas, what's the ideal team for him?
Think of a team that just needs a ball handler, somebody who can come in and set the floor. Because when I look at his game, I love how he plays out of the pick and roll. Love his first step. Sometimes I do think he can dribble himself into trouble just a little bit, how he kind of moves too fast than what he can process. Sometimes I feel like he kind of gets tunnel vision when he gets out of the pick and roll. But once again, great shooter, doesn't stand still in the half court when he does have the ball, when he doesn't have the ball. So a combo guard like that, when I'm looking at a guy like Kasparas, I would love to see him with the Pelicans. Just being able to put the ball on the floor and to be able to play off of Point Zion, and maybe to have a defender next to him in Herb Jones. I would love to see that. For a team, for Kasparas, for him to be a weakness, maybe Detroit. Don't necessarily love him in Houston just because of the minutes aspect. How much would he really play with all those young guys over there? But
what about OKC?
OKC, I can see that, but by this time next year, I think Nikola Topic is probably going to get those minutes that Kasparas would get if they were to draft him. Off the top, I really do like the Pelicans. I really do.
So here's a question for you: if Nikola Topic and Kasparas were in the same draft, who would you take above?
That's a good question.
So that's the crazy thing, because Topic went all the way 12th. Now I know that's partially because of his injury, because he was talked as high as 3, and I was extremely high on him, and I think he's another really high field player who's just a relentless driver of offense. And I think Kasparas is different than Topic, because I think it'll be interesting to see how Topic plays without the basketball, because he really seemed to thrive with the basketball last year. And I'm sure that they'll give him the basketball. So they gave Josh Giddey the basketball, and that's the beautiful thing about the OKC Thunder. But I do think that Kasparas projects much better as an off-ball player right now. And I think, with the team how they've used Isaiah Joe and guys like that, Cason Wallace, like you look at Cason Wallace and it's like, that dude is great all around. He's connective. I think OKC would be a better fit probably for him than it was for Nikola Topic. But I mean, I could see a world in which those two run a second unit, and that would be crazy too. that would be really interesting together. In terms of comparisons, is there a player comparison that comes to mind?
So far, I haven't been able to put one together. I think with his combination of off-ball and on-ball play. That's a good question. I have to pass on that and do a little bit more.
What about Bogdan Bogdanovic?
I like that. I like that one.
Yeah, it's he has a lot of the bogey stuff, right? And I wonder if he can be a better defender. That would be a major swing for me if he can be a better defender. And I've seen Bogey so much with Team Serbia, and he's playing a completely different role. And I think he's a very, very talented player who's affected winning pretty much across the board. Okay, so Kasparas, I think could be. What about his fit with the Raptors?
I like his fit with the Raptors because, once again, he doesn't have to necessarily be that primary on-ball creator, but he can have it in stretches. He can be the primary ball handler in stretches. He can also play off Scotty Barnes really well. He can play off RJ Barrett really well. So I like that fit. I like that fit with the Raptors.
Yeah, I like his fit a lot with the Raptors too. And if the Raptors do end up getting a second first-round pick and he slides, like Grady slid a little bit, a lot of people had Grady top 6, and then he ended up sliding to 13. So if Kasparas is like top 12, top 10, and then somehow there's some concerns. Maybe he doesn't measure well enough. Maybe there's some athletic testing stuff or like, oh, he has a 27-inch vert or whatever he has. Maybe there's something like that that forces him or somebody else just rises. There's a big tournament run for somebody, like a guy like Davion Mitchell, Ochai Abaji, the guys that kind of climb up the board because of the tournament, playing in Darko's system. This is like the ideal fit for him. I could also see him doing pretty well in Miami, potentially, with
Yeah.
how they use players, potentially. I could see him doing well in Orlando. I think he would be brilliant in Orlando. I think he's probably a better player than Jet Howard right now. Speaking of
Khaman Maluach. Maluach is my last name.
Okay.
And the experience is once in a lifetime experience because you get to stay with people from different places, people from different countries, and then you guys create a bond which will last forever. And it's always been great playing with them and hard working with them.
To be similar to like Victor Wembanyama and be a big old center who's swatting shots, or you try to be out on the perimeter and knock down threes. What are you trying to be?
I'm trying to do everything. It's not like I want to do one thing. I'm trying to do everything. Both ends of the court, on defense and offense too. I want to be impactful in the court.
Here's a little look at some of the stuff that he's doing, and it's goddamn impressive. 11.8 box plus minus, 78, I want to say 76 or 78% true shooting. Per 100 possessions, he's getting 28 points, 19.2 rebounds, 4.3 blocks. His numbers so far at Duke are considerably ahead of Derek Lively's numbers at Duke, and he's been incredible. Someone saying South, is he from Cameroon? No, he's from South Sudan, but he was in Senegal for the NBA Africa Academy. I think his numbers project really well. Rebounding, as I said, is one thing that really does project well, and he's playing next to a really good rebounder in Cooper Flagg. They're a pretty big team, but they're a young team, and he's a very young player. And I see lots and lots of, growth potential for him. He is shooting 71% from the free throw line, always a good sign for a young big. He's taking very few threes, but he has shown a lot of range in, youth competition over in Africa for being a very smooth jump shooter. And we're going to look at some of the tape of him going up against Team USA, and it was very impressive. Some of his plays against Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis for South Sudan.
Is lifetime experience because you get to stay with people from different places, people from different countries, and then you guys create a bond which will last forever. And it's always been great playing with them and hard working with them.
To be similar to like Victor Wembanyama and be a big old center who's swatting shots, or you try to be out on the perimeter and knock down threes. What are you trying to be?
I'm trying to do everything. It's not like I want to do one thing. I'm trying to do everything. Both ends of the court, on defense and offense too. I want to be impactful in the court.
So let's take a look at some of that defense. Now you're going to see him recover like a madman. Okay, this is insane. Watch where he starts this play. It's in the center of the court, and he is going to sprint up and block this. That's insane. His shot blocking and the amount of space that he covers up. That's Anthony Davis. All-star, all-NBA, one of the 50 greatest players of all time, swats it. Here's another one. Just swallows up this block. He is a human. Now look at this pass. This was actually very impressive. This is a turnover every time for a center, trying to gather the basketball while running forward at 7'2", 7'3", and he makes a perfect dime there to his teammate. Let's take a look at this. That's him just sprinting down the court. There is some serious fluidity here. I mean, let's take a look. That was the pass here. Look at how quickly he's getting up the court. It's just beautiful. Like, he's a very fluid athlete for his size. This is him sizing up Joel Embiid in a triple threat position, and he's going to pull a jumper over Joel. Is it the perfect jump shot? Hell no. But at 7'2", 7'3", if it goes in, ain't no one stopping that, right? Like, take a look at this again. It's smooth. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
It's got good touch. It's consistent, and he works on it. And he's a really hard worker. Here's him stretching out to the corner, and Anthony Davis is going to close out because he knows this 17-year-old kid can shoot. and he drops it in. I think he's 17 or 18 this summer. I think he was just turning 18.
Yeah, I think he just turned 18.
Yeah. So, I mean, between him and VJ, we have like some awesome stuff because of their international play with the senior men's team. We've actually seen them. And I mean, that was just like, that's an explosive, play here. Let me just take a tip. And he just, mad finish. So, and again, like, this beautiful catch here, I think this was very impressive. Good hands, good touch. Is he physically moving guys out of the way? No. But I think there is a case to be made that he is very close to Joel Embiid at the same age. Not because of the African descent or anything like that. I'm saying as impact players. I'm not saying as talents or as athletes or whatever. I'm saying as his level at the college level versus Joel's, impact at Kansas. I think it's pretty similar, relatively speaking. And it's interesting. The same person who discovered Joel, same person who discovered Ulrich is the same guy who discovered these guys. And the skills training that he is receiving at this age is very impressive. So I'll ask you, what is the ideal fit for Khaman Maluach?
There are a few teams that I would love to see Khaman Maluach play for. One of those teams being your Toronto Raptors, another team being the Chicago Bulls, who could just use a little bit more athleticism at that big man position. And I don't know how much Charlotte Williams is willing to draft. The Charlotte Hornets are willing to draft another center, but I love the way Khaman Maluach plays high, or he's available, or he can play high on the pick and roll due to him being able to recover and how fast he moves his feet, to where that can kind of help LaMelo Ball in his deficiencies on defense. The way he runs the break, to where he can be another X factor in transition with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. The way he's able to swat shots and the way he's able to recover and fly all around the floor. I think that is something that could really work with the Charlotte Hornets. Once again, another team, the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors. Those are three teams I really like for him.
I love his fit on Toronto. I think a big who can stretch the court and protect the paint, rebound. Like, I'm not sure where he is as a playmaker. I haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's bad. I think that part of his game is just going to have to develop.
Yeah.
How do you like his court awareness? Like,
I think with the threat that he is finishing around the rim, he is going to have those looks to where if he does get the ball in a high pick and roll, teams are going to collapse onto him just because of maybe him developing or already having that mid-range pull-up, and then him just being as dominant as he is at the rim already, to where those reads are going to be a lot easier because there's going to be two bodies down there and somebody's going to leave their man. So if he can continue to make those reads and consistently make those reads, I think he's going to be very impactful there.
In terms of unideal fits. So I first of all, I think I'll add some ideal fits. Detroit.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Detroit would be very lucky to get him. I think he shores up a lot, and they're already a pretty competent defense this year. I think he makes them really good defensively going forward, even with Cade Cunningham on the court and Jaden Ivey, who aren't always the best defenders. I think that system can be anchored by a guy like him, where I think you maybe think long and hard about what you have in Jalen Duren and how far you can go with, a defensive, sometimes defensive liability, at least in the switch. And maybe he blocks some shots. I don't think he's like, I don't think Chill is right about him, right? Chilltown Hoops like to say that, he's a great defender, a really good defender. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it. And I think he would be really good in Detroit. I think, if I'm Charlotte, I like Mark Williams. I like him a lot more. I like him a lot more than Mark Williams. So I think pretty much he fits everywhere because, you look at a team like Memphis, like, okay, sure, you have Zach Edey. Yeah, like, it's not a bad thing to have two really, really tall players, right? You even look at a team like a Minnesota, New York, like shit, Brooklyn. Where does he not fit, right? It's hard to think of a team where he doesn't fit very well. And again, barring that he remains relatively healthy, imagine an OKC, imagine a Miami. He fits literally everywhere. Indiana. Oh my God.
I would love him in England.
Transition demon running pick and roll with TJ McConnell off the bench, or even like he is whatever the hell you thought James Wiseman was, like in a sense, like maybe not quite, but like there's so many parallels. So yeah, I love his fit with the Toronto Raptors. I think if the Raptors fall outside the top 5 and he's available, I think you have to look very, very hard at it. I think he's going to be a positive impact player right away. I don't think he's going to need a lot of time. I think you'll need to bring him along slowly, as in I don't think you're going to be able to bring him out to the Wolves and play him 35, 36 minutes a night. But, 15, 18, 22 minutes off the bench for the first year, build that up to 30 minutes as a starter in a second year. As long as you're confirmed that the health is good, teaching elements of the game that might not be nearly as refined for him. But I have seen players like this succeed many, many times in the NBA. I think his footwork is very, very good. Are there negatives, you think?
I wouldn't necessarily put him in rotation as much, like to really have to depend on him to really constantly make rotations. I don't think he's there yet. Sometimes I do think he is a little over aggressive in points where he's specifically going for the ball and then he leaves his opposing assignment open for a shot, or it's liable to kind of bait him to really jump out for a block and then you get an open layup. There's just times where I think he is a little bit too aggressive. But once again, I've said this, where if you are a young defender, things like that are bound to happen. So with more experience, I think he's going to be able to touch up on that.
I think the fact that he just turned 18 and that he is able to do this against largely older teams at the collegiate level and is just able to dominate them, I don't think this is going to change at the NBA level. Like I think he's not going to dominate 11 box plus minus, but I think he's gonna have competitive advantages. I agree with you. I think some of his timing and some of his rotation issues and some of his miscues defensively are not necessarily a matter of skill, but rather a matter of understanding, film study, repetitions, inexperience, right? Next up, moving on to number 6 on the big board, for my big board at least, and that is VJ Edgecombe. Let's take a quick look at his stats. A live wire athlete, if there ever was one. 10.2 box plus minus, playing for the Baylor Bears. Not an easy system to fit into, but he's fitting right in. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's scoring 24 points per 100 possessions with 11.5 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 4.5 steals, and 3.2 blocks. Holy crap. That is a productive player. Let's listen to VJ Edgecombe talk a little bit about what brought him to Baylor.
Coach Drew is the main reason why I'm here right now. Super exciting coach, super energetic, love to communicate. Just been taking it day by day, to be honest. Different physicality, trying to adjust, being able to play pro. Being able to play in the team Bahamas helped me a lot. So being able to adjust, my game is the same, to be honest. Just expanding, that's all. No days off in college, I'm gonna be honest. There's no days off. The physicality is crazy too. Getting hit, like I had a welcome to college moment in practice. So being hit, stuff like that, it really hurts, I'll be honest. Teaching us to lead also. Championship, they say championships won by player-led teams. So him leading us, hopefully he lead us straight to the natty. Now everyone taking bits and pieces from him so that we all can lead, so yeah.
There's a lot to like defensively about him. His activity level is phenomenal. He gets on the ground. He likes physicality. He has like role player tendencies, but also like a little bit of Drew Holiday tendency to defensively. Here, watch that dig. And he's just, the pursuit of the basketball is what's most appealing. The biggest question, of course, is going to be the jump shot. Makes a nice pass there. And I think the passing is probably a little bit underrated. And the jump shooting is the clear big question, right? If it's going to go in like that, we're going to have, a guy who might be challenging for top 3, top 4. And, if he continues to pass that way, he's just a guy who fills the stat sheet on all levels. He's a great athlete, probably closer to 6'3" than 6'4" at times. I'll be very interested to see in the draft if that becomes a big talking point. Is he more of a combo guard? Is he more of a pure 2 guard? I think he is like a live wire athlete. That's what he is. He's a Skywalker. He's a guy who attacks the rim relentlessly, and he's a guy who can really just put fans and seats. I don't know. Like he's a guy, but I think he contributes to winning in a lot of ways that maybe some guys like that don't. And I think, some people are talking about Dwayne Wade. Some people have compared him to D Wade, Victor Oladipo. I'm curious to know your thoughts on VJ Edgecombe so far, and maybe even some of your thoughts on him going back to the summer with the Bahamas.
When I look at Vijay Edgecombe, this is a guy that's extremely athletic, whether it's in the transition, whether it's in half court. I also really like the way he attacks the glass, whether it's offensively, defensively. His rebounding value just gives the team a chance to get out in transition so effortlessly, the way he's able to be a grab and go type of tool offensively. And then defensively, he can close out very well. He plays very well on the perimeter. He's a very underrated rim protector at his size. And we look at the passing, the rebounding. Once again, this is a very raw athlete offensively with the jump shot. But when we look at how he attacks the rim and how much gravity that brings when he does attack the rim, and him having the willingness to pass out to open guys, I think that's really valuable. There are a few things that I do have some questions with. Sometimes I feel like he drives to the rim and he's a little off balance. Sometimes he can just go straight to the rim and kind of lose his touch, lose his balance a little bit. And that does make it a little bit tougher for him to finish. But once again, in transition, he's so valuable defensively and offensively. He's willing to save the ball. He's willing to dive on the floor for loose balls. He's very active with his hands. And this is something every team would want. Just somebody who's going to be relentless defensively, constantly going at you, play in and play out. Is one of those guys to where if one thing's not working, he's still giving 130% on every other aspect of the game. If the jump shot's not falling, he's still cutting to the basket with 110%. He's still rebounding. He's still defending at a really high level. So a lot of those things are things you would want a player to come in, especially as a rookie, just being able to fight for those minutes or fight for those rotation minutes, to where we've seen it in the 2024 draft class. A lot of players just demanding minutes from their team. And I think VJ does a lot of things to where we have to play this guy. We have to play this guy, whether it's the athleticism on the perimeter, rebounding, getting out in transition. He's just an amazing athlete. He's an amazing athlete. And if that jump shot is falling, I don't see a world where he's not a top 5 pick.
I think that jump shot is a major question. I have some size questions. Okay, now I understand that he's a phenomenal athlete. Okay, but the
Yeah.
measurements scare me a little bit as a guy who doesn't necessarily have the feel to play the point guard position, right? And I know that we are in the age of tweeners not being called tweeners anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's called positional versatility now. We're not diminished guys for being tweeners anymore. But for a guy who's 6'3.5" barefoot with 6'6" wingspan, that's a profile that could struggle against some length, especially when decision making can already be a bit of a concern going forward. So you wonder if some of the success is just motor, strength, athleticism, and how does that translate when it goes to the next level when everybody's got that strength, everyone's got that motor. Maybe people can't fly like him, but some of that advantage that he creates at the rim, now he's going to have to finish against taller defenders. So then, then those extra inches really come in handy, right? I think of a guy like a Donovan Mitchell, right? 6 foot, but a 6'10" wingspan, and how much he's using that wingspan defensively right now. I love him. I really do. I think you got to value kids who value winning. You got to like kids who value hustle and all that stuff. But when I think top 5 pick in a generational draft, I'm thinking all NBA upside. Does he
Yeah.
have all NBA upside? Because some people see Dwayne Wade and Victor Oladipo and they get locked into those comparisons. How about an Anthony Edwards? Could there be some Anthony Edwards in his game? Because I don't see a lot of Dwayne Wade. Flashes of it, yes. But
Yeah.
what D Wade became would be like a 99.9th percentile outcome for VJ. I think detractors of his would point to a lot of those holes and say, does he manipulate the defense in the pick and roll? Can he be tasked with being a lead ball handler? Is he going to be as switchable at the next level? I think he can guard threes at the next level because of his strength. But what about a three like a Brandon Ingram, where now you're giving up 5 inches and you don't have the length to contest? You're going to be in his body and you're always going to be undersized, right? So I don't know. I think the positional fit is a concern of mine. The feel fit is a concern of mine, but I really like him and I like his motor. But what do you see as his NBA comp?
Something I looked at, like when I look at his rim protecting as of how short he is and how tall he's able to jump, sometimes I see Derek White with the ball handling. Sometimes I see Ron Holland as an athlete and how he was at the G League, limited shooter, very good in transition, can guard really well, run out in transition, finish around the rim really, really well. So I could say a mashup of those two players. I definitely understand where you're coming from with the Anthony Edwards comp. I like that just based off of his athleticism and the defense and the perimeter defense that he does provide. So I could see a Ron Holland and a Derek White kind of mashup together to where I a little bit more.
Mm. Any teams that you would think would be like a really bad fit for him?
I think Detroit would be a really bad fit for him because
I
I
agree.
think they've drafted that mold of player 2 years in a row, the athletic, non-shooting defensive prospect with Asar Thompson and Ron Holland. I think it would be very repetitive if the Detroit Pistons would decide to go with another VJ Edgecombe. But once again, I think there's a lot of teams that he could fit on to where, like, I'm looking at a lot of these lottery teams and I'm saying VJ Edgecombe can make an impact on that team almost immediately with the defense and the athleticism.
Don't you okay, so typically the thought process in a, if I'm a GM, I'm thinking talent over everything. I don't think fit as the top of the draft. If I truly believe he's the top, if I believe he's the fifth best player and I got number 5 and he's on the board and the other 4 guys are off the board, I'm picking him. I understand what you're saying too, but does he have the type of upside where you would look at a guy like Jaden Ivey and say to the bench, and you would look at a guy like a Ron Holland and say to the trade? Like you would move off guys. Is he the type of player, if you're saying top 5 lock, if he starts hitting that jump shot, is he the type of player where you say, I know it's not an ideal fit with Ron Holland and Asar Thompson, but I like him more than both those guys. Can I just go for him because of how well he pairs in a backcourt with Cade?
If that jump shot is falling 100%, 100%. I really like the athleticism and a lot of athleticism and defense he brings. A bunch, especially next to all the small things he does on the floor. So if you add an average jump shot next to that, I think that's really valuable. To now he can attack closeouts a lot better with that athleticism, and he can make decisions once he does attack that closeout because you have to close out to him. He does provide that space. So I definitely see it being a conversation. Be like, this guy is the guy that we want to put next to Cade Cunningham long term, especially if that jump shot is falling. So I don't hate that idea.
Hmm. Is there a team that you think he would be great on?
I think Utah could use some perimeter defense. I also think a
What
team
about
like,
Washington?
I think Washington would be very good as well. You pair him with Bilal
Alex Sarr
Coulibaly.
plus Bilal would be
Yeah,
like,
I really like
yo,
that.
that would be interesting. And what about his fit with the Toronto Raptors? I'm thinking Toronto Raptors. I'm thinking him, Scotty, Mobo, like that, Grady. Like I think he compensates. And if we if we draft him, I think that's sayonara RJ Barrett in Toronto. It's like a lot of the, complications of playing those two players together. So I could see him, in Toronto and OKC, Utah. I would really like that fit for him because it would just be great for him to be in a good development system with a really good
Yeah.
development coach. Because I think this is a player that who can go into like 20,000 different outcomes. And it can get really tempting for a team to just sort of play him as a role player and sort of turn him into something less than what he could be. But if some team can really, really refine some of his guard skills and make him a little bit more dynamic, I think they could really turn him into a star. But I think
Yeah.
there's like almost a 0% outcome in which he's not like a 10-year NBA vet. Like
Yeah.
he's just gonna be a good player, and he's gonna be like he's just a 5-factor model type of player who impacts the game on all ends. And if the jump shot comes around, yeah, I could see him pushing Dylan Harper in the top 5 conversations. I could see him pushing Ace Bailey. If he measures 6'4" and a half barefoot, like if he's still growing, I don't know. A lot of kids grow at 18. If he can
Yeah.
grow just a little bit more and get himself closer to that 6'5", I'm telling you right now, if he was 6'6", he's the second pick in this draft. Like that's the gap. If he's 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan, this isn't a conversation. He's that type of athlete, and he's that type of defender where the inches are really going to matter and the percentages are really going to matter. Right now, the jump shot is not looking great. All right, let's move on to Nolan Traore. Next up.
45 points, and then I make 45 points,
Well said. So I think he's a very pesky defender. There aren't a lot of defensive highlights here. We might add him in later when we do the edit, but I really just love his shift, his verve, his full court just transition. The playmaking can be hit or miss sometimes. He makes some sloppy decisions every now and again, but it's just the burst. It's the burst, it's the finishing, it is that shiftiness in his game, the potential. When you think about players who translate well to the NBA, this is the type of player who translates very well in the positive outcome that they can get in. He's going to live in the paint. Like, he is going to live in the paint,
100%.
and he is just big enough that if you put some spacing around this guy, like if you put him on the Boston Celtics and he could just attack downhill off the bench, or like even, I look at a guy like a TJ McConnell, in Indiana, and how that dude, even though he does not shoot the ball very well, is able to relentlessly attack downhill. Well, he's bigger than TJ McConnell, and he's just as relentless getting downhill. And, I think he's very pesky defensively. So I think there's a lot to like in him. And there are people who are as high as number 2 on him. There are people who've soured on him a lot because he has not shot the ball extremely well this year. But again, this level of fluidity, this type of finishing upside, this brilliant, ability to attack packed paints and still finish over the defense. I think the ability to be just a transition terror, as a playmaker, I think this is the stuff he needs to clean up. Does he get tunnel vision here? Does he miss the shooter in the corner? Does he need to attack like 3 defenders? Like, sometimes the decision making leaves a lot to be desired. So what are your thoughts on Nolan Traore?
One thing that really stands out about his game to me is just the change of direction, the change of pace, the way he's able to turn the corner on defenders, and the way he's able to split the pick and roll. A lot of those things are extremely valuable. I think one of the best ways to generate easy offense is if you can really put pressure on the rim, and you can put pressure on the rim consistently. Because now, if you're putting pressure on the rim and you're converting at those looks or at the rim, and you're getting to the free throw line, that's going to allow defenders to collapse on you, and that's going to create open shots for the shooters around him, if there are shooters around him. That's why where he goes is so important. Once again, the jump shot has been streaky this season. It has been inconsistent this season, but we've seen that he's been willing to take those shots, and those shots have went in, and it's been inconsistent. But the way he's able to attack the rim consistently, almost knowing that that's the game plan coming in, and people are still loading up on him, and he does make the right read now and then. He does make the right read more times than not. You would like to see that be touched up just a little bit more, but once again, the change of pace, the change of direction, the relentless driving to the rim, I think that's very valuable. And I think that's valuable for one of these teams that are looking for a lead guard, have some great off-ball players already established on the team. And once he starts really converting and getting to the free throw line more and converting more at the rim, he's going to be a very dangerous player.
I can definitely see an outcome in which he is a taller Tony Parker, which is a comparison he's gotten a lot. I've seen shades and bits of this in Sean Livingston, like a very young Sean Livingston, pre-injury Sean Livingston.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he can play off the ball. The jump shot is going to be the biggest swing skill there. I like that he can probably guard 2 positions because of his length. Like, I don't know his wingspan exactly, but I'm going to assume it's closer to 6'7" than 6'4". And I just think big playmakers are really valuable because of the angles that they present in the middle of the floor, and his ability to attack a closeout, or his ability is going to be drastically impacted by whether or not he can shoot. Like, basically, if he can shoot, he's in top 3 conversations. If he can't shoot, if you tell me 100% he's not going to be able to shoot, he's an end of lottery guy. He has a lot of the same upside in a sense as Nikola Topic. Like last year, there's a lot of the same stuff here. His relentless downhill drives, his ability to split pick and roll, as you mentioned, his ability to just handle the ball on a string and just, shift defenses and navigate these very, very tight gaps. And by the way, the gaps are going to get bigger in the NBA if you play on a team with decent spacing, right? The court is always like that's the thing that sometimes people don't realize is like big playmakers don't do well in smaller court settings, right? It's when you start spacing out the court. Like if he was to go to Golden State, oh, this is going to be great, right? Like if you
Yeah.
think about it, like a team like Golden State, Indiana, places like that where there's plenty of positive spacing and a lot of shooters that present open angles for him to just get in the paint, get 2 feet in the paint and then go out. That would be just fantastic. I actually think he fits really well with the Toronto Raptors. Like the Raptors desperately need a backup point guard. They have obviously taken a bit of a flyer on Jamal Shed, who I love. And the upside with Jamal is hopefully that he can be a backup guard. But Emmanuel Quickly is a really interesting guard, but he's not a point guard specifically, right? He doesn't necessarily have the same feel and verve and all that stuff. I don't know if you see Nolan Traore as a pure point guard, like a guy who makes those pure point guard decisions in the middle of a court like a Jason Kidd. But I think at the same age, he's much further along than Quickly at that stuff. And I really think that there's a world in which Quickly and Nolan can play together in a backcourt, like as a shifty, quick backcourt. I think there's a world in which he and Scotty Barnes can be a very dynamic duo with Grady Dick, and that just really changes the trajectory. And again, his upside is really up there with the better players in this draft. What do you think about his fit on the Raptors?
I think it's pretty seamless, especially with Emmanuel Quickly and Scotty Barnes. The way Scotty Barnes plays, he is a solid cutter. He can play in the mid range. He is a solid screener. He can finish around the rim. So with those things, the way he's able to attack the rim on and off ball, I think that works with Traore. I would love to see his playmaking get better just a little bit, but I do like the fit. I do like the fit, especially with him and Grady Dick. I like that a lot.
I think if he can advance his passing up a little bit and his shooting, that just takes a whole new level. But this guy's going to score buckets. Does this feel Jaden Ivey-esque to you at times?
I can see it. I don't know if I would say that's Jaden Ivey through and through, but I see it. I see it.
Is there a player you would compare him to?
I think you hit the nail on the head with Sean Livingston. I do like Sean Livingston's game a lot. Young Sean Livingston with the more athletic, more willing to drive Sean Livingston. I did like the Tony Parker comparison. I think those are the two I would go with.
Mm. I think another thing that can really swing the upside into a new direction is if he really dials it up defensively. Because again, he
Yeah.
has the tools. Like I think he'll have the lateral quickness to be a problem and frankly a menace on that end. So I'm actually curious to see more games from him, and I want to really hone in on the defensive end because there's potential here to be really, really good defensively. Maybe maybe not quite Derek White defensively, but he has like a lot of the same tools to be like just quick, to the ball, just a menace, trying to pick up 94 feet, stuff like that. If he can show that level of his game, then you add in the scoring and the shooting. Yeah, you really do see, an all NBA upside, but I'm probably a little less certain about all NBA upside, but I could certainly see an all-star here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we got Ace Bailey next, and this is a very polarizing player for a lot of people because some people have him as the best player in this draft. Some people say he might not be a top 5 player in this draft, but I think most people have him in the top 5. And the analytics don't look phenomenal for him, right? 0.3 box plus minus, negative 1.3 box plus minus. We got a phenomenal score, 34 points per 100 possessions on 15 2-point attempts at 52%. There's 10 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, shooting at a really good clip. He hasn't been super solid from the line, but I think that's just sample bias. Like it's gonna even out. He's gonna be like probably 78 to 82% free throw shooter by the end of the year. And he's playing in the Big Ten, which means a lot of competition, and he's not exactly the most physically developed guy yet.
It wasn't really hard because I knew it's everything played for a reason. So just cheering my teammates on, coaching them from the sideline, cheering up the bench, just being an extra voice on the bench. Food, we know food, like we just talking and like, all right, Ace, what you like getting the ball at? All right, Ace, we gotta get over the screen, Ace, you gotta get over the screen, Ace. All right, Ace, like in Ace. I mean, we just like, we pick up off each other. So if I'm doing something slack, he'll tell me, be real. If he's slacking off, I'm gonna tell him he's slacking off.
So, I mean, This is a player who has the biggest tools that you could think of, right? He's a big wing, 6'10", shades of, for some people, Kevin Durant, right? I see this play right here, and I see a player who got knocked off balance and lost his handle. I see a play like this, and I see a lot of Michael Porter Jr., but I also see that leg flicking out for no reason whatsoever. I see a player here who is just bigger, dominating, at that size, 6'10". It's just not going to be easy to stop a player who's this big and this coordinated at the collegiate rank. But I do worry about the analytics so far. I mean, I don't like to focus too much on the analytics. I worry about some of the shot selection. A shot like that, it doesn't need to be that way, right? There's a lot of questions I have about his playmaking upside. Now, I think he's a much better playmaker than some people give him credit for. I've seen him make some very, very good passes and good decisions in the half court and in transition. I don't see him as just like a one-way scorer. Like, I see him as a guy who can make some good decisions and maybe even has some 5-6 assists per game type of upside down the line, like a Paul George. But what are your thoughts on Arius Bailey? So, new setup for John D, who drove home in order to prevent the Wi-Fi issues. Appreciate John D for that. Make sure to go hit like and subscribe on his channel if you appreciate the hustle and the grind of the content game. What do you think? What do you think is your upside projection, or just generally, what do you feel about Ace Bailey?
Right now, there are a few concerns I have with Ace Bailey's game. And this is not to say that he's not a phenomenal player and he's not a top 5 player in this draft. I mean, when we look at the length, 6'10", he's extremely athletic. He plays well in the transition. He's a willing shooter, whether it's off of motion, off screen, off the catch, off the dribble. There's just a few things I have questions with. The ball handling in the half court does look extremely inconsistent. There should be opportunities where he gets to the rim almost effortlessly with his length and athleticism, but he just doesn't due to his ball handling and his inconsistencies there. So we have a guy who's willing to shoot, play off ball, extremely talented, extremely athletic, great in transition, but the attacking of the rim, the pressure of the rim, it really bothers me. The ball handling, it really bothers me to where there could be an extreme hard cap on his game if he's not able to progress that. Like, if he is able to develop that type of ball handling, I could see a much higher ceiling than what it is. My dog just walked in. Don't even worry about him.
It's all good.
I can see like a Michael Porter Jr. type of game if he does not progress as a ball handler or as a rim pressure. So it's really confusing. I do still have some hope that he can progress that, but then I'm still a little iffy if he can.
I see the Michael Porter Jr. I see a little bit of Paul George at times. I don't see Kevin Durant, but I see a lot of people do see Kevin Durant. And as someone who is a really big fan of KD at Texas, he was my favorite player. I was very on the record, very publicly, that he should be the number 1 pick in the 2007 draft, and that any team that picks Greg Oden's going to live to regret it. I think draft comparisons are funny. I like to stay away from them usually because they sort of taint the picture of what we're looking at. Because if you're looking for KD, there's plenty of KD to see. You see the 6'10", you see the release, you see the butter smooth jump shot. If you don't look at a lot else, you certainly could see yourself as, tricking yourself into that. But there's been guys who've been compared to KD before. I mean, it's funny because he played with one of them, right? Kevon Looney was compared to KD. There's also I think there were some people comparing Anthony Randolph to KD. There were people comparing Andre Blash to KD. Like, it's weird, like sometimes when people just see stuff and they're just like, that's KD. It's not.
Yeah.
And I remember Jonathan Bender way back when, to go way old school, and the Raptors had the 5th overall pick and they decided to trade the 5th overall pick which was Jonathan Bender. And a lot of people were like, he's a really skilled 7-footer, damn near 7-footer. And it's just like he couldn't progress beyond what he was, which was very skilled, very, athletic, but he just couldn't put the game together, right? Like his mind did not process the game, the gaps, the court mapping. When I see Ace Bailey, sometimes I see a guy who is just too big to stop at the high school level and just way too big to stop at the collegiate level. But if he's going to take his game past Michael Porter Jr., which again is a very good player, garnered a max
100%.
contract, was a number one player, you know, but if he's going to enter Cooper Flagg talks, I need much more than Michael Porter Jr. to move me off of Cooper Flagg being the number one overall pick. And so I think that there are some concerns. What's a ideal fit for Ace Bailey, you think?
An ideal fit would be somebody with a team that has a ball handler. I would love the Pistons to have a more dynamic off ball player with Cade Cunningham, just based off what he is right now. Like I'm not going to add in the factor that he might get better as a ball handler or as a rim pressure, but based off of what he is right now, I would love to see him with Utah as well. I would love to see him with Detroit. I think Houston, if Houston were able to fall off and be in that lottery or top 5 conversation, which I don't think is very realistic, but I would
What
love to
about
see him with
Philly?
Houston. Philly as well. I was saying this in a mock draft video I had because we don't know if Philly's going to get better. We don't know how their health is going to be throughout the season. So to have him, Tyrese, and Paul George, I think Paul George will be a great mentor to Ace Bailey, and he'll be able to play off Joel Embiid really well. I do like that fit, but those would be the teams that I would look at for Ace Bailey.
I like the fit with the Raptors to some extent. I do. You know, the Raptors need shooting. They like versatile wings. They've been prioritizing shooting straight like 2 drafts in a row, right? Jacoby Walter,
Yeah.
right? They understand the model here. The model is very simple. Denver Nuggets, what they did with Jokic, we got to do something similar with Scotty Barnes. We have a really big playmaker here. He's not quite Jokic, he's not a center, but he needs a lot of the same pieces. So having a guy who mimics a lot of strengths that Michael Porter Jr. had with probably a little bit more defensive upside, maybe a little bit more playmaking potentially. I think his playmaking is a little bit underrated. Could be a really good fit for them. I like the fit with Philly, you know, playing off of, you know, like just imagine a 1-2-3 punch going forward, very young, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, and Ace Bailey. And I
Yeah.
mean, when you factor in Paul George plus Joel Embiid, if Joel Embiid's health can ever come back to form and Ace Bailey can catch up before he starts exiting his prime, that creates a very nice window for contention. But I think it also creates a very nice future for Philly in the event that, you know, Joel Embiid is not able to come back. It creates a great consolation prize. In terms of his fit with the Raptors, you know, I'm fine with it. I'm just not as high on the player right now, and I'll wait
Yeah.
and see some more. You know, the analytics scare me a little bit. The handle scares me a little bit. But hey, I was super high on Scotty Barnes, and his handle scared me shitless. So, you know, there's a lot to be said that the handle can get better. And I think a lot of this is just going to come down to his motor defensively, his willingness to get better, his willingness to work, his willingness to take coaching, his willingness to learn the game a little bit better. He's been playing his whole life. Family comes from basketball. He's been around this game for a very, very long time. There are just certain points where you're like, a 6'10 player of his skill level will probably do better in the NBA than in the collegiate ranks just because of the spacing. The increased spacing, all that, the clips that we saw where he started losing his hand a little bit. At some point, 6'10 with a, I don't know, 7'4-ish wingspan is always going to release really high. Not a lot of wings that are going to be able to bother that shot. The release is butter smooth. So I think we might overthink this. And then maybe he falls to like 4 or 5 or something like that. And then he looks great. And everyone's like, uh-oh, we missed it. You know what I mean? I think there's a really good chance he could be the second best player in this draft. So certainly no Ace Bailey slander here. But yeah, let's move on to the next player, which is Egor Demin, who is the opposite of Ace Bailey in terms of the analytics profile. He's a damn near 15.1 box plus minus. It's in fairness, BYU has not played a tough schedule yet. Their schedule is about to get much tougher, and he's about to get tested big time. Per 100 possessions, he's averaging 30 points, 14 assists, 4.7 steals, 1.6 blocks. He has been a menace. He is also shooting a blistering 56.5% from 3 and 72.7% from 2. If you're ever wondering how those analytics were put together, he's pretty much cannot miss, and he is
Why was
creating
this the
passes like
place
crazy.
when you decided I'm going to go play college basketball? Why was BYU the place you chose?
I mean, while we've been choosing with my family the university I'm going to go, one of the most important things was the place, if it's going to be calm, nothing dangerous, a play time against guys same age as me or older, but not the professionals like it would be in Madrid, where it would be kind of difficult for me to get into it, right? Because everybody's like really old mans who's really physical. Not trying to say that these guys here is bad, but the difference of probably it just would be even harder for me to start playing there.
So, I mean, a little bit of defense to offense there. He's a very long athlete. He's able to contest at the rim a little bit. He's not, I don't think, I wouldn't define him as a great defender by any means, but he's a toolsy defender. He has, I'm going to be curious to see if this can hold up against better competition. Like he's
Yeah.
trying here and all that stuff, but does he have the athleticism, burst, lateral quickness, and size to deal with bigger players, better players, shiftier players, right? So sometimes the jump shot goes in, and like this pass is just literal madness. I don't know how he saw that. I really don't. But like, it's not just the fact that he sees this pass. It's how on target that pass is. It is actually just insane that he's able to make some of the passes he's able to make. And at his size, big playmakers are all the rage. That's why Cade Cunningham went, number one in the draft. That's why Dylan Harper is so valued. That's why LaMelo Ball is so valued. And so, like there's elements here of a lot of those players, I think. There's also elements of guys like Lamar Odom, Steve Nash, like Jason Kidd, like he really feels like a point guard as opposed to a
Yeah.
point forward. His handle is just tight enough right now. Now, again, if he turns into a turnover machine, the second he goes up against, better competition, bigger competition, and we start seeing those turnovers start packing up and the shots not going in and the defense, now we're going to have some questions. But as of now, he is firmly a top 3 pick in this draft for me. And if that jump shot keeps going in, I could really see someone, potentially trying to talk themselves into 2 or 1. I don't know. Like right now, it seems crazy to think that he would be the number 1 pick. But I think like when you really start to look at this draft and you start to value like what is really important in the NBA, a tall shooter, some people are saying Luka Doncic. I don't, I cannot make that comparison with a straight face. But some of these passes that he is throwing really, really do make me think that he is a very, very special advantage creator. So what do you think of Egor Demin at BYU?
I think he could be one of those dynamic on and off ball scorers. The way he's able to hit the 3 off motion, hit the 3 off the catch, the way he's able to attack those closeouts and make plays off of closeouts. He also runs in transition and he can lead the transition pretty well. So when we have a guy who's already 6'9", can play make at the level that he does, can read out of the pick and roll the way that he does, and he really has that fluid type of ball handling to where you're comfortable having him run the offense when he's on the floor. That's really dangerous. That's really dangerous. If he can keep competing defensively and he could come in and be a above average shooter, he's going to be a very, very dangerous prospect. So once again, after this short stretch of games, I think he's played about 4 or 5 games. The competition is going to start railing up and there's going to be a lot of eyes on him to see if he can keep and continue this play with tougher competition. I don't know who they play next. I'll have to look at the schedule, but he is going to be a very dangerous prospect. Just pulling up from 3, shooting off the dribble, the pinpoint accuracy of the passes. It's really special. It's really special. So as of right now, I have him as a top 5 candidate. I'm still holding out hope on Ace Bailey, but he's moving up the ladder board pretty fast.
Do you trust the jump shot?
Do I trust the jump shot? I like the form. I like how high arcing it is. I trust the jump shot. Now, do I think he's going to be like above average the second he walks into the league. Maybe not, but I trust that you're going to have a hand up. I trust that you're going to have to close out. I trust that he could be a consistent shooter.
Yeah, so I think there's like a difference between shooters and guys who can shoot. I think he's a guy who can shoot, just like
Yeah.
Luka's a guy who can shoot. I don't necessarily think he's a shooter. So 56% right now from three is absolute madness. I would project him more like a 34 to 36% guy. So I'm very curious if the jump shot is real, this becomes way easier of a decision. Because if
Yes,
he's a
it
tall
does.
shooter who can handle this way and he can compete defensively at 6'9" and handle the pick and roll and you know play off the ball the way that he does, like this really isn't this isn't much of a conversation about
Yeah.
this being a two-player draft. It suddenly becomes a very two-player draft.
Who would you compare him to? Like based off of what you've seen so
Like
far.
Tony Kukoc on crack. Like
That's I get that. Yeah.
like
100%.
like Tony, it's unfortunate sometimes like players are only really relegated to the memory that we have of them as NBA players, but Tony Kukoc was a phenomenal player and a very very talented young player who maybe did not necessarily blossom into what he was billed as a youth prospect, but again when you watch young Tony Kukoc, um there's a lot of players that he reminds me of. Honestly, Luca is not it. Like I just
Mhm.
not sure that that's it. There's elements of LaMelo Ball. Maybe he's not as
Like he's
Turkey
maybe a
jerky.
little bit more polished, as a shooter, as no, I wouldn't say a ball handler, but maybe as a shooter, he's a little bit more polished, and the shot selection coming into the NBA is a little better.
Mhm. Yeah, there's like a real downside of Kyle Anderson with a jump shot, you know? Like maybe a faster Kyle Anderson with a jump shot, but like even when I'm describing that player, that's like a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson is a good player, right?
Mhm.
Like so Kyle Anderson with a jump shot is a fantastic player. Then Kyle Anderson who's fast and a jump shot. Like what the hell are we even describing? Like the fully actualized version of Boris Diaw or taller Steve Nash or something of that sort, right? So yeah, it's a very very good player, and I watched some of his Real Madrid tape, and I've seen stretches of games where he really can't buy a bucket, like he just can't shoot, like 18% for like an 8 game stretch type of stuff, and then he'll go on a heater like this where he's shooting 56%. So I'm really curious to see how, I want to really study those mechanics. I just want to look at it. It looks good to my eye, but I'm really curious to see more. Okay, for now, Dylan Harper is number 2. And the analytics are looking pretty decent for Dylan. Unlike for Ace, they're looking pretty decent for Dylan. A very big playmaker himself, 6.3 box plus minus. He is shooting 58.6% effective field goal percentage. He's been relatively efficient, averaging 25 points. Averaging 35.5 points and 9.3 assists, 9 rebounds per 100 possessions. That is crazy. 54.3% field goal percentage. He is 64% from 2, which is what I want to see. It's been 30% from 3. Again, 5 games, not a huge sample size. I have questions about the jump shot for sure. There's a lot of questions about that form. Okay, so
talk about that. Like, even though you have the offensive ability, what you can do and what you can create on the defensive end, and how that gets things going too.
For me, just really all of high school is really like that was probably one like a red flag I had. I don't play defense, stuff like that. So just for me trying to change the narrative, just for me being a competitor, I think that's probably one of the main things that stick out to me. That I compete with anyone, any day, any time, no matter who you are. It seems like.
And I think he means it. I really do. I see a lot of that fighting spirit in him. And, this is a nice block. He has an incredible length for a true guard prospect. I don't know if I call him a point guard or shooting guard, but he's certainly point guard adjacent for sure. He can play that
Yeah.
position. And his handle is extremely refined. He has a lot of burst, but he is probably at this point more classified as a below the rim finisher, but a crafty finisher and someone who does finish well and uses angles well, manipulates the pick and roll beautifully, is able to just get to places on the court. You know, it's funny. Like maybe he is more the Luka type. You know, in a lot of ways, the Harden type, right? And then where it's just like the craft. But then there are moments like this where you do question, you know, the decision making at times. But that's most 18-year-olds, right? Like you have decision making questions. But here you have like that finish, and you're like, is that the type of burst that's going to get you blocked in the NBA? You know, like, do you not have to finish a little bit higher? And I think the concept of higher is just that's what keeps coming up to me. When he takes a jump shot, I think he takes too long to get into his jump shot, and I think that his release is a little low. He shoots a bit of a flat ball, as you can see right there. An NBA defender is probably going to block that shot, and
Yeah.
that is what scares me a lot because we have a lot of instances of Markel Fultzisms and things like that where jump shots need to be reconstructed at the next level. And then you have like situations like Tyrese Halliburton where, you know, there were some legitimate questions about the jump shot. It goes in for a little bit, but now what are we dealing with the Indiana Pacers? Once again, the jump shot is a bit of a concern. Mikal Bridges, jump shot, right? So sometimes these bad habits have a way of, you know, sort of tracking forward. So what are your thoughts on him? And of course, like after we talk about Cooper Flagg, we can talk about the best fit, worst fit, where these players fit in.
When I look at Dylan Harper's game, I think his willingness to get to the free throw line is very, very impressive to me. I think he's averaging like 6 or 7 free throw attempts a game. His ball handle is extremely impressive. Sometimes I feel as though he drives to the rim and he kind of expects to get fouled. So he doesn't really have an intent on really finishing through the contact. And I think that's a little alarming. His playmaking is solid. Once again, I think you hit the nail on the head. As a decision maker, we're just going to give it time for it to progress. His shooting is very inconsistent. That's something I would like to see a little bit more. I do like his in-between game, the way he's able to stop on a dime, hit a mid-range shot. Once again, the handle is pretty well, and it looks like he does show effort on the defensive end. But once again, I think you hit the nail on the head with the jump shot and the release point. The burst is a little inconsistent as well. Sometimes he can have a slow first step, but it looks like he's going to be able to counter a lot of things with his ball handling, with his dribble moves to be able to make up for that first step in some instances. But once again, this inconsistent shooting is something that I would definitely want to see a little bit more of. And I kind of said that earlier. There are a lot of these top prospects who have been a little off shooting wise. I think we're going to talk about it in Cooper Flagg. He's been a little inconsistent as a shooter. Dylan Harper, Nolan Traore has been inconsistent. So that's why I kind of put an asterisk next to it, just because it's only been 4 or 5 games. But if we start to get a little bit more into the season and we're still seeing that jump shot is not falling consistently, I would start to get a little bit of concern. Is it the mechanics? Is it the fact that you're just going through a slump? Is there something that needs to be changed going into the NBA where we do need to change the arcing of the shot? So I still think he's a fantastic player. I still think he's number 2 as of right now. Those are just the small concerns that I would have for him as of right now.
What's the lowest you could see him going?
I could see a world where Egor goes ahead of him. I could see a world where Ace goes ahead of him. I could see a world where Cooper Flagg goes ahead of him. I think the lowest he can go is maybe 4 or 5.
Could you see a world where Khaman Maluach jumps him?
I don't hate that idea because 1, we don't know how the lottery is going to look. And 2, I think Khaman is such a great fit as a big man. Like when we look at a center today, I think it checks off a lot of the boxes. Extremely quick, has a great wingspan, can block shots really well. He gets off the floor pretty quickly, and what I mean by that is he contests shots pretty quickly. His recovery speed is amazing. So I could see a world where if the Bulls have the 5th pick, or a team that just really needs a center or just needs some athleticism in their front court, and they're like, you know what, we have our guy. We know who our guy is. Let's take him now. Let's not try and bet on the best player. Let's take Khaman Maluach because he's going to make an impact off day one. So I can see that.
Well, if he slides anywhere past 5, I think there should be an investigation open so far, because I really do think that shit. I don't know what's going on in my throat. Okay, let me try that again. Yeah, I really do think if he slides past 5, it's going to be trouble for somebody's organization. Someone needs to get fired or something, because I really do see a world in which he could make a couple All-NBA teams just because he's so shifty. He is, you know, he may not start super fast, but he stops so fast, right? And I've learned to just not doubt players who have that ability to stop on a dime, shift, change direction, right? Because those are the players like they can just herky jerky, they just find angles. So he's gonna get stronger for sure. I don't know if the athleticism worries me. I think the jump shot is absolutely the biggest concern. What do you think? Okay, we'll talk about fit and all that stuff in a bit, but what's a player comparison for him that you like?
I think his in-between game really reminds me of De'Aaron Fox with the shiftiness and the ball handling. I wouldn't say he has De'Aaron Fox's speed, but the in-between game within 10 to 16 feet, between 3 to 10 feet, it really does remind me of him. But once again, I don't think he has the burst that De'Aaron Fox has. But when I see him create in those areas, I see a lot of him.
I see a bigger Jalen Brunson.
I see that as well. I like that.
Yeah. So if he can start shooting, 35 to 42%, like anywhere in that range, I'm really comfortable with him. As he just got to be able to shoot it. He can't be a non-shooter. I can't go under because that's going to compromise him massively at the NBA level. I think a bigger Jalen Brunson, who's way longer than Jalen Brunson and way better at the same age than Jalen Brunson. Respect to Jalen Brunson of Villanova, he wasn't quite this level of player at the age of 19. So that extends this right up to de facto number 2 pick. Because if he is in fact a taller Jalen Brunson, he really does have the upside to be like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander adjacent. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like some real star potential here with him for sure. Okay, let's get to our final dude, and this is going to be a longer highlight package. Okay, this is Cooper Flagg from Maine via Duke, or Duke via Maine. 13.7 box plus minus. Not shooting the ball very well at all. 44% from the field, which includes 52.9% from 2. Right in line with Ace Bailey's numbers, but that 26% three-point shooting is not in line with Ace Bailey's numbers. Shooting 74% from the free throw line, that's not that bad. But yeah, the 26% from 3 is concerning, especially when you walked into college with a few jump shot issues. Per 100% possessions, 33 points, just crazy numbers, man. 33 points, 16.7 rebounds, 7 assists, 3.3 steals, and 3.7 blocks. That is a grand total of 7 stocks per game. Okay, he has a defensive box plus minus of 8.7. Okay, he has a turnover percentage of 14%. He is very, very high usage right now. You're running him like a point guard at times. 31% usage. Let's take a look at my favorite prospect in this draft, Cooper Flagg.
Cooper has been just a special guy to coach so far. And to me, the best quality that he's brought is the level in which he competes on.
I mean, for me, I think it just goes back to wanting to win. Expectations and all that is great. Outside this team, like, they can say whatever. I don't really care.
Podcast this week.
I did.
Yeah, he got superstar around him. I can see kids wanting to be like that and play like that. You know what I'm saying? We ain't had no badass, cold-ass white boy like this in a long time. I'm just saying. That's some real
What went through your mind when you saw that?
I mean, it was definitely kind of a surreal feeling because being a Celtics fan, obviously he's a big Celtics figure.
I mean, what do you say about this kid, right? I mean, the defensive motor is absolutely insane. The tools, right? The things that he can do, like, he's going to stop this, and I don't know how he's going to stop this, but he stops it right at the rim. He has a relentless motor, right? And he just has this, it's like he's got like a heat-seeking missile, right? With the basketball, and he's just going to find it. He's going to find a way to get to it somehow. And he does not stop. And he didn't stop in high school. He doesn't stop here. He goes up against Drew Holiday in the Team USA scrimmage. He's not stopping there. He's hitting turnarounds on Drew Holiday. I mean, yeah, the jump shot is a little bit concerning for sure, but the playmaking is not a concern at all. Like, the playmaking is good. He is point forward adjacent as a playmaker. He has a bit of a set jump shot, like to some extent, and he's got to motion that into more of a jump shot. But at 6'9", the ability to play make this way, the Andre Karolinko comparisons are really just nuts. I don't understand that at all. And I mean,
Neither
I
do I.
think, yeah, like he maybe defensively, because like Karolinko was like an event creator defensively, right? But this turnover right here that everybody was just like they were losing their minds. It's like how did this happen? First of all, look at the competition, right? That's a very old, experienced, and very good team that he was up against, and they forced him into making a really big mistake. And it's important to realize he's one of the youngest players in college basketball right now. He is
Yeah,
17
17 years
years
old.
old for the next month. And this play right here, that just got clipped to death. And boom, he goes out of bounds, and there goes the prize number one pick, and he's sitting out of bounds. And oh my God, what a turnover late. He's a bust, and it's just like, I'm good with it. Now, the jump shot, I got to tell you, does not inspire a hell of a lot of confidence. Just the way he shoots it sometimes, I'm like, there is no chance in hell that that is ever going to turn into like a 40% jump shooter. Can he be a 32% Can he be a 32% 3-point shooter? Because if everything else holds true with him, 32% is more than enough for me. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on Cooper Flagg?
Um, I think the defense is the most impressive part about his game. Where he can be a rim protector, he can be a perimeter defender, he can play the passing lanes, he can create plays defensively that gets his team out in transition. To where I can really see this guy being one of the better defenders in the NBA. I just think it translates, and he's willing to be so versatile on that end. The help side rim protection, being able to guard on the perimeter, having such a long wingspan, the size, the frame, all that stuff plays into account. And then offensively, he's really good at playing through contact. Whether it's on ball, whether it's off ball, I've seen him catch a few lobs. I've seen him cut to the basket really well. I've seen him have the ball on the elbow and create plays on the face in the face-up game. I do think his mid-range can be solid in the NBA. The three-point shot is kind of TBD right now, but there's a lot of things I really like about his game and his creativity, just being around the basket and being under the basket and getting to the free throw line and playing through the contact and being a willing passer and being a great rebounder. Those are a lot of things that just scream he's going to be a fantastic player. I think it translates. I think it translates.
I think motor and great rebounding usually translate, right? Defensive versatility. So I think his ability to be able to switch out on the perimeter, his relentless motor, the rebounding, that advantage that he creates, just attacking the rim, has been such a huge difference maker for a player who is frankly a 5-star recruit who could just try, not try, and probably still go lottery, right? But the fact that he tries as hard as he tries is underrated as hell. I've seen a lot of 5-star recruits who don't pick up full court, don't switch, don't hedge and recover, don't box out, don't really think rebounding is even their thing, right? There's this old Kawhi Leonard quote, "Board man gets paid." And I started to think about this guy a lot. And I started to think about how I hate all the comparisons to him. I really don't like this Andre Karolinko, Sean Marion comparison, because it sort of paints him as a way more limited offensive player than he really is. I don't know who else to compare him to. This taller Kawhi Leonard with some playmaking chops appeal to you?
I don't hate it. I have this really questionable comparison. I did a whole YouTube video about it because I thought I was tripping. I see Kevin Garnett. Like, I see a young Kevin Garnett. I really do. Like, rookie college or rookie high school Kevin Garnett.
I do
I
too.
really see it.
Yeah,
really see
I
it.
mentioned the same thing in a video when I made a video about him. I said he is very KG like, and I think part of the reason he's KG like is just that intensity,
Yeah.
that sort of unrelenting drive to just kill everybody on the court and take contact and fight through things, and really just it's infectious. You can't
Yeah.
play with a guy like this and then not get back on defense. It's embarrassing,
Seriously.
frankly, right? Like you will collapse a lung before you miss a defensive assignment when your teammate is Cooper Flagg. And I just think that players like this have all the intangible qualities that create winning at the NBA level. And if you're a team drafting at the top, obviously it's because you're not very good at winning, right? Usually it's either because you luck into the greatest trade ever backfiring, like the OKC Thunder have multiple times, or the Boston Celtics did multiple times, or you genuinely suck and you need to get better at doing the thing that you're not good at, which is winning. And this is an automatic 10 wins immediately. I think, I think he's going to be NBA ready. I think he's going to be a starter on day one. I think he is going to impact the box score. Like, if there's a rookie who can have 10 stocks, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, and 20 points in a game, it's going to be him. He can actually do that. And if he ends up going to a team like the Washington Wizards, I'm almost guaranteed he will do that. Because at some point he's going to face the Charlotte Hornets or a Detroit Pistons team, or maybe even a lackluster, Utah team that's trying to tank again. And he is just going to run the score up on them, and just they're not going to know what hit him. And what I like about him is he doesn't stop ever. He'd be up 18, 22 points. There's nonstop. It is nonstop pressure, nonstop shot blocking, nonstop rotations, nonstop rebounding, nonstop running, nonstop cutting. He is just nonstop. And you get tired watching him play, and you're like, where does he get the energy to even do this? He's so fantastically conditioned. And, contrary to popular belief, athletes don't peak at age 17. People don't usually stop growing at age 17. I mean, some people do. I certainly did. But I mean, he might actually grow to be 6'10". We don't know that yet. I mean, there's players who got to the NBA and grew like 3 inches after that. So, I mean, look at Alperen Şengün. Alperen Şengün grew. Giannis grew. Giannis grew from 6'9" to, like, what is he now? 6'11", 7 feet.
6'11"
So, I mean, if this guy at this coordination with this skill level and this motor and these defensive tools and this switchability and this level of, physical dominance against people who are frankly 4 years older than him, 5 years older than him. If he can do that at 17, what does a year of an NBA weight training do for him? Like, we're not just even talking about all-stars here. We're talking about like MVP upside with him. Like, he has, my first time I watched him play, who he 100% reminded me of?
Who?
Guess. He's a top 10 player of all time.
Top 10 player of all time. I'm gonna squeeze in some power forwards. Maybe Bill Russell, Tim Duncan.
Bill Russell.
It
was 100% Bill Russell. The way that he, and I mean, it's weird because playmaking, transition, great defender, event creator defensively, runs the floor like a demon, very athletic for, 6'9", same size, right? And I mean, there's just way more scoring upside here than Bill Russell. Way more efficiency, better touch, definitely a better jump shot. So if he learns how to shoot, Lord help us, because this is like him, Wemby. That's their league for the next 10 years. I think the hype is real. I don't know. Like, there's only one player probably in the world who's not in the NBA that I'm this excited about, other than Cooper, and that's AJ Debonsa in the 2026 draft. I can't put Cameron Boozer, Caden Boozer, those guys. I can't put them on that level. But AJ Debonsa and Cooper Flagg, to me, have, like, I'm not going to say magic and bird, but like that level of ability to change how fans feel about the game of basketball. Like, there is legit like that. The issue is, I don't think the casual fan observes basketball well enough to really appreciate the parts of Cooper's game that need to be appreciated. But I don't know, when he starts dropping 25 points per game, maybe they'll appreciate him then. I don't know. He has a lot of Scotty Barnes in him too. But
I was gonna say that. I was really gonna say that. They seem similar.
Yeah. So how would you? Okay. So now I guess we can, since we're at the top of the draft board now with Cooper, now we can talk about the fit of the top three guys, specifically Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg, and Egor Demin. Is there a place that, like, if you had to pick one team, just one, you can only pick one, that you absolutely want them on, and one team you absolutely don't want them on? And we can start with Egor. What's one team you absolutely don't want him on?
For Egor, I would say Chicago. I just think there are a lot of ball handlers in Chicago, and Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Zach LaVine, whether he stays or if he is traded by the NBA draft period. I don't think they necessarily develop talent well, and I don't think he's going to get the minutes out the gate. I think Egor is a guy where you're going to want to play him, and you're going to want to have him figure out those issues that he's going to have early. So I wouldn't want to necessarily see him in Chicago. Another guy.
Imagine like Josh Giddey, Egor Demin, and Matas Buzelis running a 3-man weave. It'd just be funny. That would be funny.
Yes, it would. I would love to see Egor in San Antonio. I would love to see him in San Antonio.
Oh,
that would be
damn.
really fun. That would be really fun.
San Antonio for Egor Demin with Wemby plus Stephon Castle. Just wrap up the league.
That would be really fun.
You could send the San Antonio Spurs and championships from 29 to 34 like right now. You just send them the championships, and be like, okay, wait your turn for this Boston Celtics thing to die down, the OKC thing to die down, and then it's your turn, guys. What about Dylan Harper? What's one place you don't want him on?
Would I not want? Okay, I wouldn't say I don't necessarily want to see him on Brooklyn, but out of all the teams, I would be like, I don't know if Brooklyn is the best opportunity. I like the coach. I forget his name, but I do like how I do like how he looks so far. But him and Cam Thomas, if Cam Thomas is there, because now there are talks about him getting moved, I don't know if they would complement each other really well. I don't know if there's going to be a Dorian Finney-Smith or a Dennis Schroeder or a Cam Johnson still there to kind of motivate him defensively. I don't know if him next to Cam Thomas long-term is going to be the best fit. And the team I would like to see Dylan Harper go to, I would like to see him play for Utah. I would like to see him play in Utah.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think all three of these prospects fit very well in Utah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the Cooper Flagg. Hate it, love it. Which team would you hate to see him on? Which team would you love to see him
on? I would love to see him in Washington. I think you could build a serious defense in Washington with Bilal, Cooper, and Alex Sarr. And then you got Bub Carrington and Jordan Poole on the perimeter, whether they're the long-term answer or not. I think you're building a real top 5 defensive caliber team in the future with those three. Cooper Flagg, a team I would not want to see him play for. That's really hard. I think he would impact every single team he goes to, but based on personal preference, I wouldn't want to see him. I wouldn't want to see him in Houston. I wouldn't want to see him in Chicago again. Like, once again, I just think there's a logjam in Chicago, and I think they really need to kind of thin out their players, like their guard rotation. But once again,
I don't speak for all Americans, but I think a lot of Americans would not want to see him play for Toronto. I'm just saying. I don't think they want to see that happen, man. But he's from Maine. He's basically from Canada. So
yeah.
I mean, if anyone is gonna play for Toronto, it might as well be him. So
Yeah.
okay, I mean, for Egor, I mean, the place I don't want him to go is probably Charlotte. I would hate for him to go to Charlotte just because they're not moving off LaMelo Ball with the ball. So, there's just like, I want him to have the basketball. A place where I would like him to go is probably Utah. Egor in Utah makes sense, with
Yes, it
Lauri
does.
Markkanen. Now you have like perfect synergy across. Hopefully Taylor Hendricks comes back. They got a lot of picks coming up in the next few drafts. They're going to have a nice young team, and he's going to make that really exciting, for them. The pick and pop with him and Lauri is going to be freaking unstoppable. Plus, you got John Collins there. You got a lot of good pieces. Then maybe Keontae moves off the ball, so I don't really see him as a point guard. So,
Neither do I.
you get Colin Sexton. You got a lot of good pieces there. Okay, so Dylan Harper, the place I would want to see him, ironically, I would want to see him in Brooklyn because I really trust Jordy Fernandez. I understand your concerns about the Cam Thomas thing. And then when you said that, I was like, maybe I don't want to see him in Houston. Maybe instead I want to see him in Washington,
Yeah.
where he has athletes like Alex Sarr, Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly to run with, and, lob threats, right? Like he can just create like sort of like lob city up there, you know, like he's a great passer. He's going to have these live wire athletes, a super young team. I just want all teams to be watchable, you know. That's
Yeah.
kind of my goal. In terms of, yeah, so I'm trying to think like a place where I don't want Dylan Harper, OKC, Houston. Like that would kind of suck, right?
Yeah.
Chicago would be kind of bad for him too, I think, you know, like with all the ball handlers, Kobe White, Josh Giddey, you know, they would probably move him ahead of those guys immediately if they drafted him second or third or whatever. Like they would move him ahead of them. I wonder if like I don't think Orlando is going to be bad. So I'm just thinking of the teams that could be in that position. I don't want Dylan Harper in Philly. You know, like you got Tyrese Maxey with the basketball, you got Joel Embiid with the basketball. Like I'm just like Jared McCain with the basketball. That just doesn't make sense. Cooper Flagg, I used to hate the idea of him being in Washington. I really did. Just because I think Washington's a really bad team. But it seems pretty much like, okay, if him, Bilal, and Alex Sarr are the future front court of that team, they will not be bad for long. And he
Yeah.
will not allow them to be bad for long. So I think him and Bilal Coulibaly creates a really fun, kind of dynamic, wingish, like very large wing duo. And selfishly, of course, I would want to see him in Toronto. Clearly, like I would love his fit with Scotty Barnes. How do you think these three players actually fit in Toronto? If Toronto was lucky enough to get them, because among the three players, like if we could rank out these players, which of these players do you think fits best in Toronto, and which do you think fits worst?
I think the best fit is Jaeger, just with his on and off ball play. I think Cooper Flagg would bring the most impact on day one. But once again, I think it would be interesting to see how him and Scotty Barnes would share the court together. Because Cooper Flagg, we still may see him as a sometimes a negative shooter. He could be very inconsistent. I think Dylan Harper in the half court would play very well next to Scotty Barnes. And I think having Scotty Barnes kind of covering for him defensively could really help his defensive game. I think they're starting to build a defensive culture in Toronto. But my personal best fit would be Jaeger, and the biggest impact could be Cooper Flagg.
So what's the worst fit?
I would say Dylan Harper. I don't know if his off-ball game is all the way there yet. And for Cooper, even though him and Scotty do play similar, I think the defense that they will be able to provide when they're on the floor together, I think that makes up for it.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that I really like about the Cooper and Scotty fit, apart from how much I enjoyed watching Scotty and OG suffocate the shit out of defenses for years, was just the ability to play off each other offensively, right? Okay, fine. Neither one of these guys is stressing the defense 35 feet from the basket. None of them are Steph Curry. See Scotty Barnes last night? He had 31 points, right?
Yeah, he
Wet
was shooting it.
threes.
He was shooting
He
it.
was shooting it, right? So I don't know if either one of these guys are ever going to shoot it at a 36% clip consistently. I know Scotty's been putting in the work. I know Cooper's a worker. If they can both get up to 35%, now we're good. Now we're golden, right? If they can both get to 35% plus all the defense, like no one will ever rebound again against this team. Like these two just board it up. You know, they're going to run the floor like crazy. They're going to find each other constantly. And good luck to the defense trying to stop both these guys at the same time because they are relentless, you know? So I personally would very much pray for Cooper Flagg. Now, the question I have for you really is at this point, number one, what are your overall thoughts about this draft in its historical context? Like, do you think this draft is kind of worth the hype that a lot of teams are talking about tanking in November, which is just crazy if you think about it. But like, there are a lot of teams that are just like, yep, pulling the plug. Philly might be pulling the plug soon. Joel Embiid might be out for the season, or they might be talking about shutting him down for the rest of the year. And they have a top 6 protected pick that is outgoing to OKC. So naturally, if they actually want to keep their pick, they better be really, really bad this year. And kudos, they are really bad. Then you got teams like Toronto that are sort of soft tanking, playing Davion Mitchell 30 minutes a night. You know, there's teams like Washington that feels like they haven't won since the first week of the season. You got teams like Utah that feel like they will be winning a game by 500 points at halftime and somehow find a way to lose it right at the end. So is this draft worth the hype?
I think I think if you look at all these prospects, I think the top 4 or my top 4, would I say top 4? Ace, Cooper, Dylan, Egor. I even think Nolan Traore has some real all-star potential. So if you are really trying to tank and get a top 5 pick, I think it's worth your while. I think it's worth your while. I think Cooper Flagg has the potential to be a top 10 player in the league. I think Dylan Harper has an all NBA ceiling. I think Egor Demin and Nolan Traore can be all-star players. And then even then, if you do fall out of the top 5, there are extremely high-level impact players. I think I don't think we spoke about Trey Johnson. Trey Johnson is a extremely dynamic scorer. Extremely dynamic. He can score off the dribble. He can create in the half court. I've seen him play out of the post. I've seen him play off ball. You're going to get value. Every single person on this list right here brings an extreme amount of value, from Cooper Flagg all the way to Asa Noel. So if you're going to tank and you're going to try to bring in a top 5 to top 7 pick, I definitely think it's worth it. If you're not a team that thinks we may make a play-in push, or it's still kind of a gamble if we are trying to make a play-in, I definitely think it's worth it. A team like Charlotte, I think it's worth it. A team like Chicago, I think it's worth it. If Atlanta had their picks, I think it's worth it. So I see a lot of upside. Even guys like VJ Edgecombe, who may have a very big question mark to his shooting, I think there's a lot of upside there. A guy like Collin Boyles, with his jump shot concerns, I still think there is a lot of upside there. I think Trey Johnson has a lot of upside. So I think it's worth it. I definitely think it's worth it.
Okay, so to the teams out there that are sort of pseudo tanking, ethical tanking, if you will, they're not going to unethically, lose 85 games in a row or 40 games in a row. Like, we're going to see some embarrassing basketball. I guarantee you. Get past December, and you're going to start seeing teams shutting down dudes and basically playing G League rosters. I'm positively convinced the Raptors have 5 rookies on their roster specifically for this reason. Because they're like, when we pull the plug, we're pulling it all the way. There's not going to be a chance we're going to win a game ever, because we're going to have Davion Mitchell pulling up from the logo like Steph Curry, basically as an affront to basketball. Okay. My question is, given the relative slander that we saw last year about last year's draft, and, we're seeing some good players coming out of that draft, but the top of that draft is considered very weak. And that's largely because a lot of those players were not projected to be all NBA types, not projected to be franchise players. Zachary Ricochet is a nice guy to have, but he's not a franchise player, right? Alex Sarr is a nice guy to have. Reed Shepard might be a nice guy to have. Rob Dillingham. A lot of these guys were not considered franchise players. How many of these players would you have taken over Zachary Ricochet last year?
Cooper Flagg. Does it matter the team? Because I don't think Atlanta would take Dylan Harper due to them having Trae Young. So does it matter like what team I'm selecting for, or just who is the better prospect than Zachary?
Who's the better prospect?
Okay. Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Egor, Ace, Nolan. If I'm Atlanta, I would take Khaman over Zachary. I may also take Rocco over Zachary as well. VJ, I would love to have him next to Trae Young. That's literally like the Dyson Daniels. So yeah, bringing those guys I just mentioned, maybe even Trey Johnson. I really believe in Trey Johnson scoring.
Is Kasparas out of it?
Kasparas Jakucionis.
Yeah.
I think so. I think I would take him over Zachary Ricochet as well. And that's not me saying that Ricochet is not going to end up being a really good player. It's just his ceiling is not as high as, especially not the top 6 guys. And then I think the immediate impact for the other guys I mentioned is a lot higher than what Zachary Ricochet has been bringing so far.
If you were GM, you'd take Trey Johnson over Zachary Ricochet. I'm getting that feeling. What about Asa Noel?
I've seen a few games from Asa. I don't really have a necessary grip on his game yet, like to really say like what I really take. Right now, he looks like a willing shooter. He plays solid around the rim, but I would have to watch a little bit more of him before I really say, oh, I'm gonna take him over Ricochet.
I think I would consider him over Alex Sarr. Like I would put them in the same category, and I think that's what. I mean, we're not looking at the full draft board here, but there's plenty of depth in this draft. There was a player in the G League Ignite, Dink Pate, and I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm saying the
I know
last
about
name
him.
correctly, but he was trying desperately to get into the 2024 draft. And there were talks about him being a top 3 pick in the 2024 draft because of his athleticism, his burst. And again, the narrative changes when the draft class changes, right? Because we were talking about him, and I think a lot of people were talking about him almost like we are talking about VJ Edgecombe right now. But now, in the context of this year's draft, Dink is being mocked all the way at 22, 23. And that is the relative strength of this draft. Is I think that there is a significant amount of value available from picks like 7 through 20. I think it's like a really, really solid starters all abound, right? Like your Peja Stojakovic's, and maybe a Steve Nash in there too somewhere, right? Like that type of draft, like the 96 draft, which is just so loaded with talent, 9, 12, 18, 17, like all the way down to like 27. I think there's going to be significant value. And the only thing I think of as a Raptor fan is, damn, we only got 1 pick in this draft. Like, can we get 2? Can we get 3? Like shit. Anyways, thanks a lot for coming on this show. Appreciate it. Through the 3 iterations that we tried to do this, you had to take a
Yeah, man.
drive. That was crazy. Where can people find you, and tell us a little bit about the channel and what you're doing over there? I just want to give a plug to our community. Definitely go help John out. He's really close to 1,000 subscribers. Maybe if some of y'all can feeling generous, definitely go check him out. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your channel.
So over at the Buzzer Sports, I do draft content. I try to post mock drafts every week. I also do game reactions after the game. I'll record a 15 to 20-minute video talking about the games that I watched. I also try and bring on guests as much as possible. We kind of do hot streaks on the channel as well, where we talk about players and we trying to give you guys updates on how well these guys are playing. Like pretty soon I'm going to be doing a video talking about Franz Wagner and how he's been playing with the Orlando Magic. We try to do uploads every single day, Monday through Saturday. Sunday is my rest day. And if you guys want to find me on the Hoop Talk podcast with Mars Talk Sports, I am there every Sunday. Yeah, man, just trying to be consistent every single day, uploading videos. If you guys like that type of content, check out at the Buzzer Sports, man. You won't be disappointed.
That's dope, man. Like I've known a lot of content creators, and consistency is the number 1 ingredient to success. Because you're gonna look back on this podcast probably like 2 years from now and be like, oh man, I'm getting so much better now. But the only way you got better is by doing it every single day.
Yeah,
So
100%.
appreciate you for coming on, man, and good luck with everything you're doing over at your channel. I hope this video pushes you over. And thanks for all the effort, and thanks for all the analysis, man. Cheers.